Hi, it's Geila from Kosher Revolution. Today we're going to make donuts because it's Hanukkah. And what's Hanukkah without a lot of oil? To start the donuts, I've creamed already 2½ tablespoons of shortening. I'm making par of donuts with 1/3 cup of sugar. Now, because my shortening was not the temperature that I like it at, one thing that I like to do sometimes is either immerse the bottom of the bowl in a bowl of warm water, or I turn it onto cream and I heat it up with my blowtorch. And that seems to get very quick results. And that makes it nice and fluffy. It's a very forgiving recipe. To this, we're going to add 1 egg and let it combine completely. And in this, here I have 1/4 cup of water with 2 tablespoons of sugar and 1 package of active dry yeast. I don't use rapid rise yeast. I don't use instant yeast. This is quite quick. And generally speaking, you really don't have to do this because the yeast that we have today is very, very reliable. You could actually just put it right in with your flour and then put your wet ingredients in. But if you want to be extra sure that your yeast is working, this is what you do. Well, that's nicely combined. So I'm going to add the yeast mixture, and I'm going to add 1 cup of the flour, and I'm going to mix this slowly until it's all combined and very smooth. We're trying to go for no lumps here. To this you add 3/4 cup, it can be milk, but I'm using Mimic cream today because, like I said, we're doing taro. And we want to get a nice, smooth, consistent, no lumps batter. And once we have that batter, we're going to add to it our flour. I like to use a dough hook when I'm kneading because you get a much silkier dough out of it. Of course, you can do it by hand. I just find that this is much easier, and we're going to be using this once we finish putting our flour in. So that looks pretty good. I'm going to give it 1 good zetz there. And I'm not going to add the flour gradually. I'm just going to dump the whole thing in. But remember, slow speed or it's going to go everywhere. This is what it looks like now. It's a sticky, sticky dough, and we're going to knead this dough with the dough hook for 5 minutes, and you'll see it's going to come out very smooth and very silky. Start small. I like to scrape down the side of the bowl once or twice, this time only once, just to make sure that everything that went in here is incorporated. I do use something called a paddle. With this, has a silicone edge on it. It's called a beater blade, and it actually does a pretty good job of scraping the sides of the bowl all on its own. So let me give 1 more good zetz. And the dough you're going to end up with, hold on, I'm not used to working backwards. The dough you're going to end up with looks like that. You see the sides of the bowl are completely clean, and you have a nice ball of dough. You're going to take this dough and put it in a clean bowl that you've put a little bit of oil in so that it won't stick when it's rising. And gently, gently, gently take out your ball of dough. It's perfect. And form it into a nice ball, just turning it in on itself. Coat it in the oil. Nice little, make sure the sides of the pan get oiled as well. Cover it with saran wrap. And put it in a nice, warm place for about an hour until it's doubled in volume. I use my warming pour. I think that that's the best. I actually have here for you some that I've done already that I'm going to show you how to roll out and form. You flour your bench. I don't know why, but this is called a bench. And you very gently roll it out to about 1/2 to 3/8 of an inch thick. And don't worry, you can let it rest and re-roll what's left over. I do not have a donut cutter, so I had to make do with a cannoli mold and a regular cookie cutter. You flour your cutter, and I like to do the rings first and try and smush around a little to make sure that the cut is complete. And once it's complete, it's not going to be perfect because I don't have the donut hole. I make my own donut holes just using my little cannoli cutter. You can also use the wrong end of a pastry tip from a pastry bag. Anything you have around. I have so much equipment in my kitchen, I don't need one more thing, so I just make do with what I've got. And basically, this is it for making donuts. You put them on a tray and you let them rise, I'd say for about 1/2 an hour. That's all they need. And then we'll be ready to fry them.
Right.
So I like to use a spatula and just gently put them on a tray. Now here's the great secret about this donut recipe. You can make just the dough and just knead it and put it in the refrigerator overnight. I even have had luck freezing it and then taking it out and letting it get to room temperature to rise the day that you want to make the donuts, so that you don't have to do it all in one day. If you refrigerate it overnight, what will happen is it will rise more slowly because of the cold and be ready to work with as soon as it gets to room temperature in the morning, which always makes life easier as far as I can tell. So we're going to just let these rise now, and I'm going to prepare the oil in the pan, and we're going to fry them off, and then I'll show you 3 or 4 different ways to decorate them. I'll be back in a few minutes. These glazes are both the same. This is thinner, this is thicker. I'm going to show you how to make the thinner one, and we'll stop in between so I can show you when it's thick. In the bowl of the mix, so after I've added the 1 tablespoon, I'm putting in 2 tablespoons of melted shortening. Of course, if you're doing dairy, by all means, use butter. Give that a quick one. And now I'm ready for my 2nd tablespoon of water. And I'm going to stop here for a second just to show you how 3 tablespoons of liquid makes. This is an icing you can use to frost a cake, you can use it on cookies, you can use it on cupcakes. I happen to like something thinner to make the clear glaze. But be very careful, you can always add more water, and if it gets too runny, put more sugar in. One more. And that's all there is to it. You now have, as you can see, a very nice, runny glaze. And all you have to do is dip your hot donut in it and let it cool, and you're ready to eat. Time to make the donuts. I have on my burner a plain fry pan with just a regular kitchen thermometer. I've heated the oil to 375 degrees. And we're going to place the donuts in the pan, and I want to show you. You see how it's vigorously boiling at the beginning? And it is actually boiling. It is the water content from the dough reacting with the oil in the pan. And the minute that the boiling subsides, it means it's time to turn it because it's completely sealed. There's no more water content left. This particular burner that I'm using is not my regular stove. I'm just doing this so that the camera can see me. My regular stove is hotter and therefore it goes faster. Whenever you're frying anything, you see I turned it so it starts bubbling again. Whenever you fry anything, make sure that you fry it to one shade lighter than you actually want it when you eat it, because it will continue to brown after you take it out of the pot. The other thing that I found that works very well for donuts, if you want the glaze to drip very nicely, is to take a hot donut. Let me just stir my glaze up a little bit while that cooks. Take a hot donut, just submerge it halfway into the glaze and place it. And that's all there is to glazing a donut. This happens to be the thinner donut glaze, not the thick white that I showed you earlier. Always put a piece of parchment paper underneath where you're dipping so that it will drip onto the parchment paper. See, bubble, 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 and you'll see in a moment it's going to change. You do like to drain them on paper towel. And the bubbling will subside. You can do them as many at a time as you'd like. I'm just doing it. Don't crowd the pan though. That's very important. Don't crowd the pan. It will bring down the temperature of the oil. You want the oil to remain consistent, which is another good reason to glaze in between putting new donuts into the pan. That way the oil can come back to temperature, because obviously the raw donuts are not 375 degrees. They bring down the temperature of the oil. You want the temperature to come back up. Also, chopstick, my favorite tool for making donuts. You flip them, you pick them out of the pan, you put them on the thing. It works perfectly. Okay, so I'm going to stop for a second, do a little glaze, turn them over, and you see the glaze goes on white but then clears off. You probably should wait longer than I do. I have asbestos for fingers, not everybody does. And you can also use your trusty chopstick to take them out of the glaze as well. And here go another two. Bubble, bubble, bubble. And you'll see they're going to calm down. And when they calm down, you're ready to turn, and they're brown on one side. Also, if you're going to be adding sprinkles, now's the time. If you're going to add sprinkles or decorate in any way, you do it when the glaze is wet. I just have a bunch of Hanukkah blue and white here, so that's what I'm doing it with. I'm not a particular Jimmy or sprinkle fan, but I know that the children are. So just to make it look a little more festive for your holiday table, it's nice to have. I saved the donut holes till the end, and I'll show you why when we get there. In fact, I'll do them next. Bubble, 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 bubble. They'll quiet down. Time to turn them. And in the meantime, we glaze. The bubbling stops. You turn them. The bubbling starts again. You wait till it stops bubbling. You see how it's boiling in the middle? And then this one has stopped boiling. Must be brown. That one got a little too brown. Remember, they continue to brown after you take them out. Okay, donut holes. Not the easiest. They sort of have a life of their own. They turn in whatever direction you want. So I suggest tossing them in the oil. I put them in the oil, let them come to the top, and I keep them moving. Just keep turning them and turning them and turning them. I just washed my strainer, so you hear the water. Apparently it wasn't perfectly dry. What can I tell you? Push them down if they won't go. And there you have donut holes. And that's all there is to it. Come back in a few minutes. I'm going to show you a great presentation. Hi, it feels really good to sit down after making all the donuts. And I'm just going to show you a quick presentation that I've come up with. Not terribly original, but when my daughter was young, she hated birthday cake. So I used to go to Krispy Kreme and I would make a mountain of donut cake for her. And that's what we're doing here. So even though I don't have all of my different flavors like I had earlier, I have enough here to just show you how we do it. I try to do one flavor per layer, and I try to get the colors to differentiate as well. Obviously, you put the ugliest ones on the very bottom where nobody will see them, because you and I both know there's always some ugly ones. And you just make concentric circles, building them up higher and higher until you end up with a cake. And you can do it as complicated or as uncomplicated as you'd like. This is the very quick and easy version. I'll put my little Jewish stars on the top. Maybe I'll sprinkle some blue here and there. And you just pile them, make it look appetizing. And believe me, it's not going to stay looking like this for very long, because everybody's going to come in and eat them in a nanosecond. If you want to get a little more complicated, you can do that. So this is a little more complicated version. I like to do this when I'm having a Hanukkah party or just for company. And it's the same as what we did earlier. I've layered the donuts. I've covered a serving plate with Hanukkah wrapping paper. I've strewn gelt and ribbons all over it so that it looks like something you really just want to dive into.